The language of politics and political debate can be a divisive one, but there is a language which transcends all political views, barriers, stereotypes, and prejudices. It is the language of music. Music reflects our emotions and feelings, no matter where we live, where we come from, what we think, or what we believe in. But it can also be a powerful tool in the fight for a better world, in the fight for freedom. We talk this language, this time, the music of freedom. I'll be joined by a journalist, Bartek Chaciński, Mateusz Torzecki, Polish Song Museum, and a musician, Stan L. Breckenridge. Join us for this exceptional episode of American Debate, Thursday the 29th of July at 6 p.m. Polish time. Grzegorz, Nawrocki, I'll see you then. So the time has come. Welcome to American Debates, holiday edition this time. Summertime and holiday season is in full swing, so our meeting today will have a bit of an entertaining tinge. At least I hope it will. We'll talk about music today, but from a sort of a different perspective, different to the one that we usually hold close to our hearts. For many of us, perhaps most of us even, it is a sort of personal code, a personal language to express our emotions, to experience some deep feelings, a very intimate thing altogether. But we can also look at music as a witness of history, or perhaps even an active participant or creator of history. Frankly, it would be quite interesting to a sort of history book written in tunes and lyrics rather than dates and names. We'll try to go this way today and decipher music as a voice of social change, music for freedom. And for that, I'm joined by Bartek Chaciński, a journalist from Polityka and Polifonia, Mateusz Torzecki, Polish Song Museum. Hello.
Hello.
A very interesting background behind you, Mateusz. So what are the capsules behind you? Where are you? Are you in the museum?
Right now we are in the Polish Song Museum in Opole. We are on the first floor, and you can see this fantastic capsules when you can watch episodes of Story of One Hit, the program that we are making with the Polish television. So a lot of multimedia in our museum.
Quite intriguing. Okay, nice of you to have joined us. And Stan Breckenridge, a musician and also a lecturer at Mickiewicz University. Hello, Stan.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine. How is your keyboard?
Oh, because my keyboard is fantastic.
See, this is one of the surprises that we have. Oh, in fact, Stan has prepared for you, and so we won't only talk. We'll also have a bit of a concert today during this program. So, as usual, we have US and Poland in focus in our conversation, our debate, perhaps. So however distant we are in terms of historical roots, music played its role in the fight for freedom. It's been a sort of emblem, a symbol of great social changes. And can just start with that very thought and very reflection. Would you agree? That's a question to all of you, whoever wants to start. Would you agree that music not only assisted, but also to a certain extent made history, at least in the past 150 years or 200 years?
Well, from the perspective of African American culture, that is without doubt. Not only can we be thinking about the freedom songs and the protest songs of the 1950s and 60s, but if we go back to when the first Africans were brought to the New World in the 1600s, the music helped to shape American music. In fact, it helped to shape what is, in fact, very different from that music brought by the people from Europe, whether they are from Poland, whether they're from Germany, etc. So without doubt, that is certainly true. And certainly it is true 1950s and 60s.
Sure. Bartek, would you say the same thing about Poland in terms of its relationship with music in social terms?
I'd say the music was really helpful, especially during the 80s, to shape some new views, new political views, to open up towards the Western culture. But for me, music, no matter what times it is made, songs especially, particularly, the songs are kind of one of the quickest mediums to comment on anything that's happening. It's like a living chronicle, and we actually checked it during the pandemic. After memes, internet memes, songs were one of the quickest things to happen and to comment on what's happening in our world. So I think it will stay like this. It's a quick, it's a very popular, it's a largely understandable medium. So it has to be everywhere where something happens.
Yeah, well, it's a good news for Mateusz, who is the curator of what's happening in Poland in terms of songs. Would you agree that songs and music and popular music with its lyrics and artists had a great impact on the freedom as a concept in our country?
In Poland and in the United States, I think that what Stan said was really good, and Bartek, because I think even more when we are talking about the music of freedom, maybe music is equal freedom. Because even in the 19th century, when we are thinking about the music, the roots, the blues and the jazz, it was the only moment for Afro-Americans then to feel free when they were playing the music. Music was the most wonderful thing in their lives and our lives, and I think that as a medium, the song is something wonderful. It could be a pop song, it could be a great rock song, but it could be a protest song. And when we are looking on the 60s, on the whole decade of the 60s in the 20th century, we see that the songs, even in folk music, the spiritual music, gospel, was always about freedom. We have to remember that in the 60s we have the first generation of young people after the Second World War that was questioning the life of their parents. They didn't want this kind of life. And then the pop culture was born, the music, the films, everything started as an eruption of pop culture and was very, very interesting. And the music was something that gave us a lot of freedom.
That's an interesting and beautiful thought, Mateusz. Especially, I'm bringing it back.
So I'm romantic. It's normal.
No, but what you said, I like what you said. That music is not really about freedom. Music is freedom.
I'd say the popular, especially popular music, is freedom. It's a kind of expression that the expression of folk songs, of blues, that was born in the late 19th century, beginning of 20th century. It's a kind of invitation to participate. Invitation. It's no more the era of the masters, no more era of education, of music that can be done only by few masters. This is the era of music as a medium of communication between people, and as such, it is freedom. It is freedom for everybody to
Okay,
be
so
a part.
that's the state of affairs today from our perspective. Stan, can you take us back to the very, very roots of when it all began and how it all began, and in what way music was a catalyst for freedom, or what the Black community brought into the America then with their music? And I know that you've got the little help that you brought, that is your keyboard.
That's right. If I may comment on what the other two gentlemen said, I think it's important to realize that when we are talking about African culture, African American culture, there is a distinction. When we talk about popular music, or this term pop music, while it is true that it is that music that is popular, I think it's important, especially when we think about blues songsters. This method of performing was not intended to be considered entertainment, but rather to be considered as a way for that songster to endure whatever he or she is going through. And so, and this is a tradition within African culture. So I think it's important that we segregate this notion that the music was for the people. Yes, it was, but it was also for that individual. Even when we are talking about African slaves, this music was for that individual to be able to endure those hardships. The same thing is true 1940s and 50s. So now, going to your question about, let's go back to, actually, I would like to go back to the 1940s. It's because it is at this time that we began to see the style of music that mainstream American culture begins to embrace, other than jazz, and that is rhythm and blues music. Rhythm and blues, of course, was influenced by most of the other styles that preceded it, be it work songs and spirituals, blues, big band jazz, New Orleans jazz, early gospel, right, the 1920s. And of course, there were some other styles too. I wouldn't so much talk about, or rather, I wouldn't include ragtime in this group. But of course, most styles, or rather all styles that Africans and African Americans on American soil did, is going to have some influence, especially after World War II, as Bartek
not
said.
only in the States, I believe it radiated. Perhaps gentlemen, I'm sure they know more about that than I do. But it radiated all across the world, and we also took it in Poland as a kind of freedom tradition from our overseas friends.
Yes. And so when we talk about, and I think that it has already been stated, one of the reasons why that the spirituals and the hymns and the African American hymns, right, as well as early gospel songs were used during the 1950s is because of the power of the Black church. And this was the center for African American culture as far back, records show as far back as the 1700s, right? Although there was no per se Black church then, but certainly when we get to after World War II, this idea that the Black church is the center of African American community. And so therefore, those songs that were used were those songs that most people knew. And perhaps most importantly, these were those songs whereby the lyrics were there to give people hope and faith, right?
Do we have any similarities, Mateusz or Bartek, talking this mechanism or this relationship between society and music in Poland, would you say? in spite of all the different historical differences that we have between our roots and American roots, especially African American roots?
Of course, we are discovering some similarities. I've got this this book behind by Kacper Pobłocki called Chamstwo, and this is a part of a very recent intellectual movement that that goes towards explaining how Polish folk music could be also an echo of what happened in our society back during the 18th century and 19th century, up to regaining the individual freedom by people in the country. I mean, the people, not noble people, because we were, as all European countries, we were dividing people, segregating people, and this can be a similarity, but I don't think that it can be compared in the level of complexity, in the level of his inspiration that it gave to different musical genres, it cannot be compared easily to Afro-American music.
All right, Mateusz, would you like to add something?
Because it's very hard. We have so much different history in Europe and the United States, but we have to remember that Polish people love to protest. And for example, we see the 50s. The jazz was some kind of protest in the 50s in Poland. And then even in the 60s, the rock music. We didn't have in Poland the rock music. It was called big beat. It had to be called big beat because rock was bad, because rock was from the West, and the party didn't like anything that was from the West. So it had to
so
be...
in that period, music was a political statement, really. It was a political statement.
Even if you have a long hair and you were wearing jeans, it was some kind of political statement. For example, Tadeusz Nalepa from the great band Breakout always said that he knew that when he had long hair, he was wearing jeans, he wasn't looking good on the street because the policemen always look at him. And we have to remember, right here in Opole, the Polish capital of the Polish song, we have to remember that this festival in Opole that is more than 55 years old, even then in the 60s, the artists had problem with the long hairs. Guys with long hairs always have to make something with the hairs, wear some kind of hat or something, because in Polish television it wasn't normal that the Polish bands has long hairs. So even this was the problem. And then we have the 80s. The 80s is, like Bartek was saying, very important decade for Poland. Even when we say about the thing that was in Poland in the year 1981, so material law in Poland, it was very hard time. We have this material law in Poland, it was one thing, but the second thing, it was again, eruption of rock music in Poland. So it always is very, very important when we see the rock music in the 80s in Poland as some kind of protest. And then we have another very important festival in the 80s, Jarocin Festival. It was a rock festival, and it was again, the place for the young people to listen to the music, because one thing that I
also a kind of protest, yes,
very important. Yes, the thing that's very important. We always have to remember that music is always very important for the young people, and when it's important for the young generation, it's always the chance that the things that are among us will change. So maybe again, as I was saying, young people are romantics as well.
Yeah,
so
right.
they believe in the music. They believe in the power of changing. As Chaciński was saying, people have the power, so we have to believe it.
I can see Stan is nodding, especially when Mateusz said that music has a potential to change, to bring about change in the society. And you've mentioned a few reflections on that particular thing. And after decades, after so many years, what would you say? What kind of change did this kind of music bring to the American society and globally as well?
You know, I would like to comment on just that, because when we talk about change, right, and as what Mateusz just said, you know, this is something that is extremely powerful. And I think that oftentimes people that they overlook that until after the fact, right? After it has in fact changed, right? And often they will point the finger at some of the source, perhaps not giving as much credit to that music. You know, if I may just sing something very briefly here.
Yeah.
You know, I had mentioned this idea that every person wants to have faith, whether that be faith from a religious perspective or hope, right? Yeah. And of course, those slaves, of course, people during of the 1950s and 60s. This is what they were.
All right. So that would be, ladies and gentlemen, that would be the first song performed live on this series. Stand
just a short version. Okay. You know, and just to tie in that other point that I think that we all mentioned, that the idea of using religious lyrics was very, very helpful. Is because this is what America was okay with accepting, was that it was something about God, but the slaves, right, also used it for their own faith and hope for freedom. I'm thinking about this song, Didn't My Lord Deliver Daniel? Didn't my Lord deliver Daniel well, Daniel well, Daniel well? Didn't my Lord deliver Daniel well? Why not every man? He delivered Daniel from the lion's den, stoned from the belly of the whale. The Hebrew children from the fiery furnace, why not every man? Hey, hey. Did my Lord deliver Daniel well? Daniel well, Daniel well. Did my Lord deliver Daniel well? Why not every man? Why not every man? Don't you know? Why not every man?
Great stuff. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's a shame that we don't have more time. Yeah, that we don't have more time to ask you to do more of that. What's the song?
Didn't my Lord deliver Daniel? Taken from the Old Testament. You know, if God can deliver Daniel from the lion's den, if God can deliver Jonah from the whale, then why can't God deliver me from freedom?
All right.
I think that it's very important what Stan said a moment ago, that we always have to remember that the context of the song can change above the years. For example, when we have the whole freedom movement in the United States, and we take the most important song, We Shall Overcome, gospel song from 1901, and that was then popularized by Macaulay Jackson. And we have the year 1963, and we have John Baez, we have Pete Seeger. In one moment, this song is some kind of hymn of the protest, even if it's more than 60 years old when they are singing this song in 1963. So we have to remember that when we have one song in 20, 30, 40 years, it could meaning something completely different.
Yeah.
So it's very important to remember that, again, song is a very, very powerful I even will say this word, weapon, that we can use in some kind of moment of our history.
Absolutely, yes.
Bartek.
And songs gain meaning in relation to somebody's life. It's even more. I agree completely with Mateusz, and it's even more personal. And to explain our Polish relation to American music, it has to be. I'd like to return to Leonard Cohen's quote about the songs are like tofu. No particular flavor at the beginning, but we can make it and we can make it taste like anything, more or less. So songs are becoming part of our life, and during big beat era, as mentioned by Mateusz, a kind of our answer, our ersatz of rock and roll music on concession from Polish government. We were rather following American music, but not following the particular meaning that songwriters gave to these songs, but catching the phrase like just like people have the power. People have the power can mean something different for Afro-American singers who are fighting for civil rights.
So did American rock music or Western rock music
completely different in Woodstock in '69, and something completely different for us because we were treating some American songs without the context as songs of our freedom during the year. So these were our songs in a way, in a particular way. That's why gaining an access to American music, to Western music, was already an act of freedom for a lot of people in Poland.
Did Western music, rock music, overthrow the communism in Poland?
There are we can say, of course, we can say that it's a kind of simplification, brutal simplification. It can be heard. We had even this documentary Bits of Freedom, which was about the music, how the music broke the Iron Curtain. But it's probably not as simple as that. But it helped us in a way, and many people, even from America, like Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary said that rock and roll was a kind of medium that couldn't be stopped. Music was a kind of medium that couldn't be stopped, especially in the 80s after MTV gained global access. And of course, if MTV never existed, we could have internet a bit later, and internet would break all the barriers that were built by anybody.
I just wanted to say that if you want to make any comment or ask questions to our speakers today, just feel free to do it underneath this broadcast. I hope we'll have enough time to address your comments or questions if there are any. Just before this conversation today, I asked a few friends of mine, what is your association, your first thought when it comes to freedom song in Poland? And 80% said it's the Jacek Kaczmarski, Mury, which I'm sure Stan, you know that song. It's the walls will come down, which is a borrowing, in fact, from a Catalonian song, protesting against the Franco regime with different lyrics in Poland, of course, for that matter. But it sort of strengthens the idea that came up once or twice in our conversation, that one song can be really different in different circumstances with different words, a different spirit, but it can fulfill the very, very same role to give people some hope and perhaps even to motivate them to fight for freedom.
Absolutely. You know, this song that was mentioned earlier, we shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. You know, I have heard this song sung for not only African Americans. I heard this song sung for equal pay, equal rights for women. I heard this song sung in San Francisco for the LGBTQ community. You know, so this is certainly, and I believe many sources will point to this song as being the sort of unofficial, right, anthem of the civil rights movement, 1950s and 60s in America.
And it's gaining new meaning and in different circumstances. As somebody has just written, now we can sing it in Poland.
Uh-huh. I would love to hear it. Yeah.
Well, you might teach us. Okay. Let's go back to Poland. When you think about such an emblematic song or a piece of music, Mateusz or Bartek, I know it's a simplification, but we only have about 40 minutes for this conversation. So, what would that song be? An equivalent of what we have just heard from Stan?
Oh, equivalent.
I'm sorry.
I don't think we can find as universal example. I'd rather choose something very individual and something which can be even a bit bizarre today because of what happened with our stars of the 80s later. Because our revolution of the 80s wasn't about was going into the different direction than the revolution of hippies or the punk revolution in England. It was going towards commercial market and liberal market. And not fighting against this. So more or less, our stars of punk rock are more maybe more right wing as for their political views, more or less. And this is, I think, characteristic for all the countries from Eastern and Mid-Eastern Europe. But I'd point. A song by Perfect, Chciałbym być sobą. I'd like to be myself. That can be completely absurd now with no meaning because anybody can do anything more or less with their lives and at the level of individual freedom. But as an anthem during the 80s, it was perceived as something. It was perceived by me. I was 7 or 8 back then, maybe when this song exploded. The popularity of the song exploded, and it was perceived like a call for gaining for something that we cannot have because we cannot express freely freely in Poland. We couldn't at the era, and we couldn't do all the things with our lives that were happening to Western people. So it
free
was
nations,
like a kind of dream anthem about individual freedom, positive freedom, because there's positive and negative freedom. It's freedom from something and
freedom
liberty to do something. And in English, it's nicely. There's a nice frontier, very subtle but nice frontier. In Poland, we say wolność, and everything is just in one word.
All right, Mateusz?
It's hard to choose one song because we have Mury by Jacek Kaczmarski. We have a very important song that was sung in 1981 on Opole Festival, and it's sung by Jan Pietrzak, Żeby Polska była Polską. And it's a very important song, even if this artist is not popular right now. But we have to remember...
Was it Włodzimierz Kocz who was the author of the music?
Okay. And this song was very important then in the first years of the 80s. And we have to always remember about this when people in the amphitheater in Opole was not sitting down, but they were all listening to the song of Jan Pietrzak and singing the song couple times in a row because it was so important. Everybody knew in 1981 that some things have to change in that moment. And it was true. Then we have the December of 1981, again, the martial law that I was saying in Poland. But for me, it's a completely different song because it's still Romanian, it's still important. And it's a song that we can sing for more than 30 years. And it's all the time the true. It's a song by the band called Tilt. Jeszcze będzie przepięknie, jeszcze będzie normalnie. I hope so.
All right. Okay, let's move forward. We're in our times with new social problems arising both in America and indeed in Poland. I remember Bartek said in the very beginning that songs are the most effective or the quickest, did you say, medium or media that communicate various truths to the general public. You've got your protests for different reasons, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, and all the rest of it in America. We have our protests because of political authoritarian changes that are being implemented in Poland, including the anti-abortion law, but judiciary reform law and all the rest of it. How do you see the role of music, the role of songs, the role of this type of message, musical message? What kind of impact might it have, or what kind of impact does it have today?
You know, I have found, with respect to looking at some of the marches, some of the protests of Black Lives Matter, and of course, looking at the number of offenses, particularly against Black men by officers who don't think, because I think that it's very important for us to give respect to those officers, men and women that sacrifice their lives or life on a daily basis. And so one thing that I have noticed is that, and obviously the media nowadays, as opposed to the 1950s and 60s, it's so saturated now that it's difficult to sort of get a hold on, well, what is the social norm? But I can say, based upon what I have seen, I don't see the idea of solidarity that Black Lives Matter in terms of using song as much as I have seen with the 1950s and 60s. And I think one of the reasons is because the 50s and 60s, it's still too close. I mean, this was somewhat after, right? When we think about when at that time, President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act in July of 1964. This really wasn't that far removed from the type of activities and social behavior among African Americans prior to World War II. When we get to the 70s and 80s, this is when I began to see various aspects of the African American community change. And it's as if, because I am a product of the 1960s, that I felt that we were one voice, we had one song and one goal. Whereas now I see a lot of voices with different perspectives. And most importantly to this conversation, I don't see the music as powerful. And again, I could be wrong, but thus far what I have seen.
Okay, would the same thing apply to Poland, Bartek and Mateusz, do you think? I mean, this musical creation around the protest seems to be quite powerful. I remember this song, I think the title was "Fuck Off" by Justyna Biedrowa after the
I've heard that song, yeah.
After the anti-abortion law. But there were quite a few others. How powerful could they be, or are they, do you think, in terms of Polish protests?
I'd agree with what Stan said about saturation. That saturation is the culture is so deeply saturated that it's very difficult to hear that one voice and to hear it properly, to remember it, and to regain its value after months, after years, maybe. Songs are written. Sometimes songs are written for a week. For a month. The songs of protests of last year's women's protests in Poland were very powerful, but lasted not. They didn't last so long. So the same for other politically electrifying songs made recently. Of course, there are hip hop producers, rappers in Poland, very popular, very popular genre, done in a very American way. But I don't see how Pato Inteligencia that made a famous word for a few months could be an anthem for anybody after 10 or 20 years. Rather not, but I may be wrong. I might be wrong.
What do you think, Mateusz?
I think that we have right now on protests a couple of groups that are marching together, and it's really hard to choose one song. As Bartek was saying, for one side we have Mata, a young person from Poland that is contesting the reality of young people in Poland right now. But I always want to remember about the artists that we have for a couple of years. Even if we don't have one song, I always want to remember, for example, what was going on in the United States when W. Bush was the president. We have, for example, Neil Young that was contesting and always singing, for example, the whole album, Living with War. About Bush government. Exactly in the Poland, we have, for example, the band that is called Big Tits, and they tried to make an album that was about the party that we have right now. And they were singing the song about the politician from the party. So we are trying, but they are not so famous songs that will be the anthems of the protesting people. But still, the songs and the album that are trying to think about our reality right now are coming out every, I don't know, month or every year. So it's important. But the songs are not, as Stan was saying about We Shall Overcome, and anthems that are universal and we can sing on the street when we are protesting. It's not this decade, not this time.
Maybe the era of anthems of such powerful songs is basically gone in this new reality that we're just about to enter.
We'll use the songs from the past in new context. Maybe this will be this kind of solution.
All right, gentlemen, we're soon about to finish. So I'd like to ask you about your sort of parting thoughts on where we are in terms of music and freedom, and perhaps we'll try to talk Stan into giving us one more piece before we go, a sort of concluding piece.
Sure.
And I know that we had a short conversation before we started here on air, and Stan said that the painting behind him is just a cover for his new CD. Is that correct, Stan?
That is correct. And this painting, if I, in fact, may even mention her name, yes?
Yeah, sure.
Her name is Evelina Vasiluk, and she's here in Warszawa, and she has painted some wonderful paintings. So this is going to be on the front cover of my album of songs that I wrote during 2020 because of COVID, right? And so these are solo piano pieces, and so she has called her painting Revival, and I love this title because this is actually what I feel that I and perhaps others are going through after COVID, sort of reassessing our lives, right? What is it that is most important to us? People.
Okay, Stan, are you ready to give us a taste?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. But before we do that, before we just let us give it Mateusz and Bartek a chance just for the final reflection of what we have briefly and with few simplifications discussed today.
I think that we have to remember about one thing. I always say that for the people that are in the museum, for the students or anyone I met, the world will be the better place if we were listen to the music every day, a couple days a week. Listen to the music, because I know that we are in a specific time. We don't have a time. We are working a lot of time in the weekend and a month. But when we have the time for our reset, sit down, listen to the great music, and you will really feel free. Music is freedom, so listen to the music.
Thank you.
I'd like also to end this to give it a positive ending, not the negative one. So when songs may appear obsolete as a medium of as a medium of fighting for freedom, we have all the songs that were already written. I mean, we are living in the world with so much songs, so much beautiful music ever written, and we can give it the new meaning. We can rediscover it again and again. That's one. And the second thought is that we are living in the moment that's very open towards individual creation. And it may be that we are just returning to this picture that Stan gave us just at the beginning of our discussion, when anybody has access to instruments, to medium, to microphone, to some knowledge about singing, about writing songs. And anybody can sing his particular pain, his particular problems, just for himself, not to gain some popularity. Just make it a people's medium back.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Regain the people's medium. Yeah. Very inspiring thought. All right, Stan. and your musical conclusion of this meeting.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for this wonderful topic, because this is something that's very dear to my heart. In fact, I am engaged currently in a book with two other authors, professors. It's a book whereby it's looking at the breadth of African American music. And my particular writings most recently were on these songs here. So I am very excited for this conversation. I would like to end again what Bartek said, this idea of a positive note. And I think that Mateusz's note was also positive too. So here's a song written by Miss Nina Simone. I'll just say these words, this first verse, just so you hear what is she saying. Written in 1967, or rather released 1967 by Nina Simone. I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things I should say. Say it loud, say it clear for the whole wide world to hear. I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains hurting me. I wish I could say all the things that I should say. Say them loud, say them clear for the whole wide world to hear. I wish I could share all the things in my heart, remove all the bars that keep us apart. I wish I could know what it means to be me. Then you'll see and agree that every man should be free.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bravo.
Thank you.
Stan,
Thank you.
Breckenridge, thank you, and all the best and good luck with your new release. And thank you for today, Bartek Chaciński, Mateusz Torzecki, and Stan Breckenridge. All the best to you guys. And ladies and gentlemen, we're taking a month break, so enjoy your holidays, and we'll be back with you again in September. Take care, and see you in a month. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.